week, start of the week. It's going to be a big start. There's a lot going on that you need to know about that you don't always get elsewhere, and we're still suffering from the worst censorship in American history under the Biden regime, and we're seeing some cracks in it. I mean, the work that Elon Musk has done with Twitter is remarkable. I think it's calmed down a little bit of it, but there's still very, very little reporting on the. It's almost impossible to really report how the Biden administration is hurting this country. Maybe the item we should start with. There was a warning that was given by General Mike Minahan to his troops. Now, Mike Minahan is an Air Force general, 32 years in the Air Force. As far as I know, impeccable record. And he wrote a memo to his 50,000 Air Mobility Command, in which he's got 500 airplanes under his command. And he said that my gut tells me we will fight in 2025. And he just didn't say that. He analyzed it for them. He said Chinese President Xi Jinping secured his third term and set his war council in October 2022. Taiwan's presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a reason. United States presidential elections are also in 2024 and will offer Xi a distracted America. Xi's team, a reason and opportunity are all aligned for 2025. Minahan concluded. He directed all personnel of the American Mobility Command, AMC, the Air Force's main mobility evacuation refueling arm, to focus on target practice. Fire a clip into a 7-meter target, aim for the head. He also ordered them to consider their personal affairs and ensure they are legally ready and prepared. He said his goals are to build a fortified, ready, integrated, and agile joint force maneuver team ready to fight and win inside the first island chain. The memo was addressed to all air commanders, and it was and other Air Force operational commanders. So, I mean, there was a bit of a debate on television about this between two congressmen, one that I know and one that I don't know very well. Adam Smith, of course, the Democrat, thought it was awful that a general would talk about war. Of course, what is he supposed to talk about? Equity? That's what they really want, right? Or how exactly we should deal with transgender people in the military. This is Biden administration's focus for the military has been: how do we get more transgender people in? How do we make sure the commanders are sensitive and speak in politically correct tones? They have reduced the funding to the military. The Congress restored a teeny bit. Net result, still a reduction. Meanwhile, they let China build a navy bigger than ours, which may come from the fact that China bribed Biden. But it's good to see a general talk like a general. I mean, he's supposed to get his people ready for war. And Adam Smith, from the party that China did a pretty good job of purchasing, says war with China is highly unlikely. And generals need to be very cautious about saying we're going to war. Exactly what are they training their people for? What do we have them for? Not to teach people equity. We have them to teach people, I hate to tell you this, but to kill, to defend us, to kill people who want to kill us before they come and kill our children. That's what they train people for. And there are people in the world who are training to do just that. Millions in China. And we've let them get so far, they have a bigger navy than we have. We have 2 oceans to defend. They just have 1. You realize how outrageous that is? I mean, I'm not talking about treason, the legal term treason. I'm talking about treason between us. Any president that lets that happen should go down in history We shouldn't even have his picture on the wall. There should be like a blank picture to say he sold out America. Oh, for $31 million. You want the amount? We could even toss an amount in if we want. But of course, the Democrat also said that the general was terrible for saying this. And war with China is highly unlikely. General needs to be very cautious. This is like when Biden said that China is really a friend. That was when he was running for president, and some of you guys were stupid enough to vote for him. Congressman McCall, who has been on the right side of many issues, including immigration, had the more intelligent observation. I hope he's wrong. I think he's right, unfortunately. Mike, I think you're right. I think we are better off assuming the worst and preparing for it, rather than walking along saying there's not going to be any war with China. That's what we did when Japan did a surprise attack on us. We can do it again. Or when bin Laden did a surprise attack on us. Given the fact that China is committing so much of its budget to the military, which it never did before, China is pretty focused. I don't know why they're doing that if they're not preparing for war, and or at least preparing for war with Taiwan, which means we have to make a very difficult choice at that point. It's not like Ukraine. We can get into that at some other point, but I think you can see the difference between the two and what it would mean. Boris Johnson reported that Putin told him he could hit him with a missile. Boris, who is a friend of mine, who I debated once about what's a better city, New York or Paris or France.
London.
Yeah.
New York.
Well, I ended the debate. I waited for my best shot at the end. I said, somehow there are. Somehow nobody in New York ever goes to an English restaurant. I mean, we have Chinese restaurants, Italian restaurants. We have American fare, basic American fare. And we have Indian restaurants. We have never heard of an English restaurant. You think New York has better restaurants? The place went crazy, including the English people.
Mayor, I had a friend recently tell me that she spends a lot of time in London, probably not as much time in New York. She claims London is a better city than New York.
She obviously has no taste. Obviously, she's not an Epicurean, has an Epicurean taste. She has a taste of food, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's one crappy restaurant after another. The good restaurants are crappy. I mean, and the only good restaurants they brought in from other places, like they brought in French and Italian cooks, but they even get bad when they're there. I mean, the atmosphere.
I can't imagine why someone would ever rate London over New York. I'm trying to be objective about this. I don't get it.
Their Broadway is half the size of ours. I mean, it's the place to go try out for New York. The Opera House is nothing compared to the Metropolitan Opera. New York's a much more exciting city.
Do you think maybe that's interesting. The double-decker buses, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just get all excited about double-decker buses. Yeah, sure, yeah.
And they got
a city with a double-decker bus.
They got a big Ferris wheel or something, too.
And and if you want dense traffic, impossible traffic. And they have that
skinny streets, right? Narrow streets.
My God, the traffic's awful. I mean, you come in the morning from the airport, it's about 3 hours before you get to downtown London. It's ridiculous. And they have that congestion pricing, which we want to put in New York, and it's really made it a disaster. Congestion pricing has made London a disaster. They have a purely socialist mayor who is, I think he's opposed to England.
Yes.
So the mayor wanted to meet me when I went there for the Yankee-Boston game. I really had no desire to shake hands with the mayor of London. I don't like communists and socialists. Never did.
Oh, he came out against Trump.
In fact, he came out against really America.
Yeah.
The guy is a self-avowed, very dedicated socialist. He just finds it embarrassing to say what he really is, which is a communist.
Well, we beat him in 1776.
He's a terrible mayor. And the city has their own crime problems. It's not exactly a safe city.
Sadiq Khan.
We're not even on the same level. The two cities are not even on the same level. I mean, there are a couple of other cities in America that probably are more exciting, certainly.
Miami. LA.
Miami is a much hotter city. Much hotter city. LA has too much crime. LA really has too much crime and too much homelessness.
Yeah. I mean, if you're into history, Boston, maybe DC.
Boston is a better city.
Wow. I knew I could get you going on that question.
Philadelphia used to be. Philadelphia is being totally destroyed. LA is being totally destroyed. San Francisco is being totally destroyed. And Chicago. Those are all great American cities.
Chicago
used to be greater than
the second city.
London. Chicago still isn't deteriorating physically the way San Francisco is almost at the verge of being gone in terms of physically. Philadelphia is almost on the verge of being gone based on crime. It's a small city, and it has per capita so much more murder, let's say, than New York. It's like ridiculous.
Sad.
I mean, murder is just rampant in Philadelphia. Crime is rampant. The DA is a complete tool of the criminals.
Comment below your favorite city and why. Your favorite city.
The only good thing about London is they don't have a Soros DA in London yet. Soros hasn't decided to go ruin England by, putting in about 70 or 60 district attorneys and having to put all the criminals free. But Putin told him that he could bomb them. He said, Boris, I don't want to hurt you, but with a missile, it would only take a minute.
Wow, he said to his face.
And the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, says it's a lie. That Putin never said it.
Is any chance Boris is selling a book? And I like Boris, but
Boris is a little.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say irresponsible. That wouldn't be right. But he's a little.
Has a little bit of a showman quality, which is good. It's not a bad thing.
You got to worry about exaggeration.
Exaggerated, yeah.
I don't think he says something like that, though. I mean, that's
a pretty cut and dry.
That's a pretty darn provocative thing to say, that he threatened him with nuclear.
To his face?
I only have to believe that Putin was kind of messing around a little, the way,
Have you met Putin?
I have. And Putin is in his personal conversations, is pretty judicious. I mean, he's a very dangerous man and a very evil man. Don't fool yourself. But it's a hard one to tell what happened. Chelsea Clinton is raising money for the World Health Organization. Now, get this right now. The World Health Organization is controlled by China, the Chinese communists. The World Health Organization, I would consider an aider and abetter of the death of millions of people with regard to doing phony reports on the origin of CCP virus, which is Chinese Communist Party. If we had known about it faster, sooner, if they had really played a role in disciplining China, I don't know that you'd have stopped it, but you save millions of lives. So we're talking about an organization that its communist and left-wing policies kill people. The World Health Organization, in its handling of COVID, led to the death of many, many people. And why this Clinton is supporting them, I don't get. Except it sounds like she's joined the woke left, and completely. So, or she just likes her name attached to things where people.
Where does she live?
Cocktail parties all say, "Oh, WHO, oh yes, there is."
Big deal. It's a big deal at those cocktail parties.
Fine organization, yes. Well, of course they covered up for China. I would too. I mean, they pay me a lot of.
One sentence too far.
I don't know. Maybe she's part of the Chinese group. The group that they've sort of
where does
kind of influenced and gotten control over in the United States, which is very, very large and includes a substantial number of high-ranking Democrats. That's for sure. There's a Gallup poll that lists the biggest problem in America. See if you can guess, Ted, the biggest problem in America. This is unfair because I have the poll here, and I don't think I would have got this.
Comment below. We'll give you a couple seconds while we think about it. the biggest problem in America.
See if you guys can come up with it.
Yeah, comment below. What do you think a Gallup poll asked Americans the biggest problem in America?
Yeah, I'll put it over here.
What's the question? Is that it?
That's it. That's the
what's
question.
the biggest problem in America?
Okay. Now,
wait. Let me.
I'm before we get to that, I'm going to
give people some time to guess. Yeah.
I'm going to. We're going to get to a kind of a little concentration on how the terrible situation that occurred in the Tyree Nichols murder, really, how it could have been avoided. Because, I guess, Friday night while I was watching it and worried about after we got off the air, actually, I was watching it with Ted. There was this fear of, are they going to go forward in Memphis with violence? There was some pretty good preparation there as far as jumping on top of the case right away, getting indictments right away, putting out solid explanations of them. I thought there was a lot of hyping of the video, which I was very afraid of, that it might stir something up. The mother's comments were brilliant. The best I've seen in terms of someone trying to accomplish that. I mean, many mothers have, and some have succeeded, and some have failed. But this, I think these really got to you. Maybe it was the statement that seemed quite sincere, that she forgave them and was praying for their families. I mean, sometimes when that is said, it seems a little unrealistic, right? And you wonder if someone's reciting that because you're supposed to say something like that. She said it in a way that was extremely credible. So I give her a lot of credit for holding down. And seems to me, as far as I know, Jed, there was no violence in Memphis.
None. Much to the media's disappointment. Many in the media, their disappointment, they were ready for blood.
Interesting. There was some in New York.
Yes.
And we watched it.
It's very interesting.
We were watching it, and all of a sudden there appears on television a guy jumping up and down on a police car. And the guy was doing it for about, a little bit. And I was saying, they better get him, they better get him, they better get him, they better get him. And I'll get it. Okay. And I was getting annoyed that the cops weren't doing. I said, we train them differently than in New York. We're supposed to. In New York, there's a way to. I mean, Howard Safer and Bratton and Carrick and I left them with this way of looking at it. And we had a lot of riots before I was mayor, and a lot of them happened because we used to have cooling off period. In other words, if they just threw a rock or spit at a cop or jumped on a car, they'd let him go because he got in that confrontation. It leads to another, it leads to another, it leads to another. There was a report done about the Crown Heights pogrom riot under Dinkins, in which there were 4 days of black people running after Jewish people and trying to kill them and beat them up. And he did nothing about it. At the behest of Reverend Sharpton, Dinkins did nothing about it. And his excuse was it was a cooling off period. Meanwhile, people were getting killed, beaten, taken to the hospital. Place was burning. And finally, Ray Kelly, who was like number 3 in the department at the time, I think, took it on his own to come in and just bring the police in and stop it. So when they did a report on it, the Cuomo appointee who did it spared Dinkins nothing. I mean, he just went after him, said, "You're the cause of the riot. Wouldn't have happened but for you and Sharpton." And there's no such thing as a cooling off period. You got to make your stand right away. And I analogize it to the broken windows theory. You go after it at the beginning and you cut it off. So our approach was, first, you can protest all you want, but the first rock that's thrown, you go to Rikers Island. You got arrested. You go to jail. The second one that's thrown, same thing. Third one, same thing. There's rarely a fourth. So I'm looking at this saying, you got to get this guy right away. I'm getting a little critical, like Monday morning quarterbacks. You saw them all over television all weekend, right? I try not to be, but I guess you end up being no matter what. And all of a sudden, like Superman, there I see the uniform of the best police department in the world, the NYPD. And I see these arms reaching out. They grab the guy and they basically roll him across the top of the car. Then I see next to the guy gold. What I mean by gold is I'm looking at the guy and saying, aha, they got the second one right too. And there's a high-level commander of the New York City Police Department. We're going to look at it together. At first, I thought he was a captain or whatever, which is pretty high. I think he was an inspector, which is the equivalent of a general. Now, he's the one who took charge of it. The younger cop got him down, but immediately the older cop took charge. And no, like, debating on the street, discussing it with the people. Some of them were trying to get involved. Immediately, he turned around and they walked him away. And put handcuffs are on before you say Jack Robinson. Not like, 12 minutes to put handcuffs on. Or in the Floyd case, in a half hour. The handcuffs get on immediately before anything else, before they talk, before anything happens. And before you know it, the guy's out of there. And there's a predetermined walkway to get him out that the cops had, undercover and regular cops. You just couldn't get near there. And it happened so fast, the potential rioters had no chance to react, because that could have been their excuse for a riot. So I've been preaching this since the Floyd case, because my first criticism of the Floyd case, aside from the inhumanity of it and my obvious my conclusion, I just don't think there's another side to that case, in the sense that that police officer was warned a number of times that he might kill Mr. Floyd, and he kept going ahead with something that wasn't necessary, having him out there in public with his knee on his back. And why the heck the guy wasn't handcuffed and thrown in the car, whether he liked it or not, is beyond me. Why there wasn't a commanding officer there or high-ranking officer there is intolerable. And I made those points back then. Well, same thing here. You don't see. It took 13 minutes to put handcuffs on him. Every arrest that I've witnessed, and I've witnessed probably more than most, including those done by the FBI and the police and the Drug Enforcement Administration, the cuffs go on and the guy doesn't even know it's happening to him. It happens. It's like automatic. And these guys are trained in doing it almost like magicians. You know how magicians do sleight of hand? Every time I've seen a cop do it, it looked to me like, how did he do that? And it's like, boom, the hand goes back up. Including an arrest that was made of a guy attacking me and a female cop. Before I even knew it, she had the guy down, up, and the handcuffs were on. But there wasn't like a discussion. The handcuffs go on. You can always take them off. So I want you to watch this, okay? Now, let's see where we have this. Where do we have this, Ted?
Twitter.
Okay, so can we show it?
Yes, yeah, here. Absolutely. We have the full.
I want to show it to you because I want to, and I want you also to get my podcast tomorrow at Rudy Giuliani, and usually it comes out on Wednesday, but maybe we'll put it out tomorrow. Might as well, because it's with Howard Safer, who was the second police commissioner. First was Braden, second Safer, third Carrick, all fabulous. Very lucky man to have had them.
Let's put it somewhere and hold it for a second so I can zoom in.
And I interviewed Howard because, strangely, I was watching him on TV just before this happened, and I was telling people that were here, Howard was so good at that. I mean, Howard had well, they all did actually, but Howard, I'd say Howard had a special instinct for the good ones and the bad ones. Like, for example, when the Loema case took place, he didn't hesitate. Right away, he told me it was a bad situation. We got to turn this around. We got to arrest these. We got to make this case. Let's, you go back to being a prosecutor, and I'll go back to being an agent, and we're going to catch these guys. You know how long it took him to solve the case with this guy who put a plunger up somebody's backside? less than 24 hours.
All right, Mayor, I got this perfectly zoomed in if we don't move it from here.
On the other hand, in a situation where it was unclear whether the cops were wrong or right, and very ambiguous, and you could easily have made judgment against the cop. In fact, we had demonstrations for 3 months of people getting arrested. Howard said, go slow on this. This is a close one. This is not what it appears. There could be problems here in the sense that the cops really, this could have been an accident, the way it happened, a justifiable mistake. So let's go by the letter of the law. Letter of law being they're presumed innocent. But when you have clear evidence that they're not, then of course to run a city and to keep it from blowing, you got to do something responsible.
Mayor,
Howard had a great sense of the where and the when. Believe me, and that case you're talking about, that I'm talking about, where all these people got arrested and stuff like that. And if you go to the podcast, you hear a very funny story about Jesse Jackson in that case. Very, very funny.
I want to play it for you on
here.
Okay,
let's play that and we'll go back
I'm gonna play it on here, and then you can watch it right here. It's the same clip.
Okay. So you see that. Yeah. You see the guy, you see this guy here. By the way, he's got 13 convictions, this guy. So I don't think he's some kid that's this guy's got 13. This guy's a career criminal. Now he goes around the back of the car and he comes down. That's him again. There's a cop in the car. Now the cop finally comes out. Nice and slow, not crazy stuff, right? Like nice and slow, very deliberate. All of a sudden, watch the legs. Come on. Oh yeah. Watch the legs. It's over. Handcuffs are on already. You see the big guy? The big guy's smiling. He's making sure there's a little crowd that looks like a huddle, looks like a football huddle. That big guy could, maybe if that big guy was playing for San Francisco, they would have beaten Philadelphia. That guy is a big guy. Now, notice the crowd wants to get involved. The lady there, she'd like to get involved. She wants, I don't know whose side she's on, but she has no business there, right? And that, you see that guy there? You see that little thing on his shoulder? That guy is an inspector of the New York City Police. You see the gold braids on their hats? Those are not police officers. Those are high-ranking members of the New York City Police Department. The young lady is a police officer. That's a police officer there with the hat on. The 2 men you see standing there are 3 of them are officers, 4 of them are officers, and 1 police officer. This is basically, and there's a young police officer watching it. You can see their age, and you can see when you see the gold on the hat, you're looking at a higher ranking officer. See the one without it and one with it? That's a captain. You see the 2 bars? That's a captain. By the way, the guy's gone already. The crowd's looking for him, and the guy's gone. Where'd he go? Okay. Where'd he go? I don't even think you have to count the minutes here. I don't think you have to count the minutes. Look at that. Look at that guy. What a scum. 13 arrests, 13 convictions, sorry. But what he's doing out on the street, thank you, Governor Hochul. Thank you, New York State Legislature. Look at that. But notice the cop didn't come out right away. And look how calm he, look, it's like, this is my job. I'm going over there. Did you see him jump out like a crazy man and take his gun out? The guy taking him down, I'm telling you, is better than 50 years old. The guy taking him down is the equivalent of a general in the United States military. The guy next to him is, let me see what he has on his. He has bars on his shoulder. The other guy's got eagles on his shoulder. That would be generally like a colonel in the military, but in the New York Police Department, it's an inspector. I'll tell you the ranks in a minute. Everybody around him is a high-ranking officer. There's NYPD legal, okay? There's a lawyer there. To protect him. No, he's going to tell them if there's probable cause, what they got. The people dealing with the crowd are 50 to 60-year-old, at least 20 to 25-year veterans of the New York City Police Department. Now, the young lady obviously is a younger officer helping them. But this is under the command of the higher ranking level of the New York City Police Department. And you'd say, oh, gee, just an arrest for... Well, of course, they understand the volatility of the situation. I'm not saying NYPD hasn't had problems and hasn't had issues, many less than other places for who and what we are. This police department is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is it. You want to learn how to police, you come here and you watch them. And I don't care, even when they don't have the support. And they're doing better now with Adams. I have to say that. I mean, Adams is not an enemy of the police. De Blasio was an enemy of the police. But even then, they would pull off something like this. This is their training. And I went through with Howard, how they're trained to do this in the academy. They're trained to de-escalate. That's the issue, right? Now, isn't that the problem with the horrible beating of Mr. Nichols? Didn't the cops, among other things, escalate it? I mean, when the police officers, can we go and get the first encounter, Ted, the first encounter of the police in the Nichols case? Okay. What surprised me about that is this is let's assume the cops are right, because there's a bit of a division about whether there was reckless driving or not. But let's do this. Let's assume, like you do when you dismiss a case on a motion to dismiss, a summary judgment, you assume, no, on motion to dismiss, you assume the facts to be true. So let's assume that the cops are, that the facts that we don't see on tape, the cops are right about. That, in fact, he was reckless driving. Exactly what that means, it should be spelled out a little bit more, because there's reckless driving and there's reckless driving. You could be reckless driving and not putting people's lives in jeopardy, although potentially you are, but you could be reckless driving and absolutely putting people's lives in jeopardy. I mean, reckless driving is a very broad term. I've seen it applied when it shouldn't, and I've seen it applied when it should. But what the reason for this hostility is, I mean, in a way, they had a right to be. He did a job on the NYPD car. He humiliated the department by doing that. They could have gotten a cop coming out of the car, now that he knew that he had 20 or 30 of his people around. He could have come out pretty angry. But he comes out like he's just going to give a ticket. Stays calm. They use a veteran to bring him out, bring him down. A veteran. I'm thinking of another reason you do that now. I mean, the reason is you didn't necessarily have to have a veteran bring him down, as long as an officer level is in charge of it. It keeps everything much more under control. But they went even further here and used a highly experienced, high-ranking New York City police commander to do the takedown. And I got to say, the guy's in great shape. He took him no time. Just pulled him, boom, the guy disappears. I'd love to get an inside picture of how fast those handcuffs went on. I'm not even sure he did it. There probably was somebody waiting there, get the handcuffs on right away. That's the training they lacked. The overreaction has more to do, I think, with their personality than training. Do we have the part getting out of the car when the police officer went?
This is the first part.
But let's go back to the beginning of it, because
go to the touch the screen.
It's
just a YouTube clip. Yep.
Right here.
Yep. Touch it again. Yep, that red part. You got it. Okay.
It does not want to go back. All right, here we go. Now let's just take a look at this. Look at that. What's the point of that? They don't even really search him for a weapon. I mean, it's not as if they've taken him out of there like that because they think he has a weapon. What's the point? What's the point of all this? Now, we can watch the rest of it, but this is very short. And then he runs away, which, look, my first reaction to look at this. The guy is begging. He's de-escalating. But then when they go to handcuff him, which they make a big deal out of, why is not handcuffed already is outrageous. Now, how this 150-pound guy slips away from these 3 or 4 guys who look like they're 200 plus, how he gets away now is that's also pretty rotten policing. How's he getting away? They obviously never played football. And then, of course, I think we remember that he catches up. They catch up with him later, and then the really bad stuff happens where they hit him and beat him and kick him. But I'm going back to the initial confrontation. What's the anger? What's the tremendous anger about? Contrast that with what you saw of the New York City police officer who was the victim of having his car smashed in and was locked in the car when it was done. That would tend to make you angry. These guys were not in any way the victim of any violence from this guy. He was, right? Being in a car like that, I don't care if it's a police car or not, and having it banged around like that, it's going to start getting your emotions up, right? If you're a tough guy, and these guys are all tough guys. But he obviously was trained to suppress that. And to make certain of that, commanding officers are sent to volatile situations. It happens regularly in New York. Apparently, it doesn't happen all over. It didn't happen in Minneapolis. Went on for 30 minutes, and I didn't see an officer there at all taking charge. And it didn't happen in this situation. Now, this situation was quicker. Might have been harder to get somebody there. But I still don't understand that. I do not understand the anger part of this. Now, we gave everybody enough time to decide what's the biggest problem facing America.
Do you want to hear what some people are guessing?
Yeah, I do.
Censorship. One person mentioned censorship.
I might make that number one, but God, it wasn't.
It was not?
It was not.
One other person says the southern border.
I see that one too, but no, it was not.
Okay. I'm going to guess, this is my own guess, is going to be the cost of living.
No.
The wage gap. The growing is there if there is
these are all big problems. These are all big problems, and they're ones that I might have selected.
I don't know, Mayor. I don't know.
I want to get the poll out so I have the exact numbers here. The number one problem is the government.
Wow.
Number one problem was the government, the government itself, and that was true for Republicans and Democrats. Republicans a little bit more than Democrats. Republicans were ahead of Democrats.
95%?
No. It was a plurality.
Okay.
It was a plurality win. I'm trying to see where I put it. It was a plurality win. It was like second, I think, was inflation. It was like 21% government, 15% inflation.
Okay, so that's cost of living. That was
immigration.
Okay, so people were guessing, but that's interesting. Number one,
those were the top three. But it was
surprising.
It was the plurality winner. 21% government, 15% immigration or inflation, and 11% immigration or inflation.
Yeah. Should not surprise you, especially conservatives, with everything that's been happening. You could say even beyond the last few years with COVID and inflation and the elections and some other stuff. Yeah, you could say it's been a long time. For a long time, conservatives haven't been as trusting.
I mean, New York has added again two other civilians who punched police officers during that a bit of violence in New York, which seems to be more than in Memphis, were let out without any bail. The guy that you saw there, his name is Argenis Rivera. He's 33 years old. He has a career criminal with a violent past. He has 13 prior arrests, not convictions. And he was held on $10,000 bail because he had just been arrested and let out without any bail for strangling a mother pushing her 2-year-old child in a stroller in Chelsea. His parents told the New York Post their son was always difficult to control and always did what he wanted. Now they come up with 10 grand. He'll be out on the street. He'll be able to hit a couple more mothers before we do something about him. What the heck? I mean, it is socialist New York, communist New York. One of them who defaced a cop car, a police car. I wish they'd write police car instead of cop car. Got a desk appearance ticket. I mean, that's like getting a parking ticket. I mean, it's ridiculous how they get away with this stuff. Just totally ridiculous. Jim Jordan, my friend, says he doesn't know if this can be deterred with proper reform or training, or because it's sort of so evil, and it adheres in human nature that some people are out of control. He's right. And he's right in the sense that we probably can't expect that it can be completely controlled. Just like we can't expect that we can completely control crime. We're never going to, I used to say, we're never going to have a time without crime until God decides to change human nature. And that's probably true here, but that doesn't mean we can't reduce it. And it doesn't mean that by training and by supervision, we get it down to the bare minimum that happens because of things that we don't observe. Now, remember, 2 of these police officers were hired after they lowered the standards, and many police departments have complained that they've had problems as a result of that. Now, lowering the standards is to make the police department more equitable. Well, you don't need an equitable police department. You need a good police department. I don't know what equitable means. And this idea that a police department should reflect the color of the community, maybe this incident kind of suggests that really isn't the number one goal. These 5 police officers were all black. Despite that, several black leaders, no, they're not leaders, tried to make this into a racial incident. And even Sharpton said, well, it wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have done it to a white guy. These 5 blacks would not have done this to a white guy in the car. How does he know that? And that's in order to make it an incident where he can make money or get publicity. How do you know they wouldn't have done it to him if he was a white guy? We don't really know. What we do know is what they did was wrong. What they did was criminal. We really don't know their motivation. We really don't. We don't know why they did this. I mean, and the why is a big question here, because that whole way in which the cop comes at him at the very beginning is, again, compared to the other police officer, right? Now I'm not even comparing the 2 police departments, I'm just comparing human beings. What's that about? I mean, they were after this guy before anything happened. This guy had done nothing in their face to create that. So we have any more observations about this or questions about it?
Thanks for joining us, America's Mayor Live. We have some people making some comments here. Lots of comments actually coming in. One person asked, and maybe you might have an expert view on this. Our friend Rob asks, how do we know this guy died from the cops? Who, as you would say, police officers. Do we know that he died? He says he died 3 days later.
Well, I'm sure that will be part of the defense, as it was in the Floyd case. I guess what we do know is they viciously beat him, and then he died. That's what we know, because we didn't do the autopsy, and we didn't treat him, and we don't have the medical records. And I'm sure the defense lawyers will do everything they can to separate his death from the beating. Will they be successful in that? Who knows? Because I don't know. I do know he was a sickly man. He was 150 pounds. Did he have Crohn's disease? He had a disease. He had he had a chronic disease also that made him so skinny. He was like 6'1", 6'2", and they said 150 pounds. He looked a little heavier than that to me, but not a big man. And I think I read somewhere that he had Crohn's disease. So exactly what that means, but you know, in the law, it's not quite true because the juries, you know, take this into consideration. But when I get strictly legal, there's a theory, and this is mostly in tort law, which is law of negligence, and it's the civil side of criminal law. There's a theory that says, a principle that says, you take your plaintiff as you find him. So if you hit somebody that's sick and they die, and they wouldn't have died but for the fact that they were sick, but they wouldn't have died but for the fact you hit them and they were sick, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with an unjustifiable killing. So you take your plaintiff as you find him. You got a healthy plaintiff and you get lucky, the guy doesn't die. But you have a sick plaintiff, the guy dies, you have the responsibility for that. So you can only go so far with he had other things. And the question is, did the beating exacerbate that such that it killed him? If it did, then they're guilty of murder, one of the degrees of murder. That's why I think they use second degree. Also,
thanks for joining us.
It might be hard to do the premeditation, be a stretch to do the premeditation probably. Although I got to tell you, the way the cop came at him, we'll get an answer to that, I think. You know what's really tragic? It looks like a situation in Israel. It's not an intifada or anything like that yet. But there have been 2 attacks on civilians in 3 or 4 days. There have been attacks by the Palestinians using rockets. Israel did a drone attack on Sunday night. And then it's just reported there have been a number of explosions, fires, and cyber attacks on there. Also, there's been a hit in Iran of the drone attack on a military factory in Iran that may have the potential of setting back the Iranian nuclear program. And of course, the Iranians blame Israel, and Israel says, no comment. Anything to set them back as a nuclear power, despite Biden's insanity on this subject, or Obama, who helped to fund it, is good for us, good for America. Not that Biden does things that are good for America. He rarely does. 72% see this scandal as Biden's scandal as a big scandal.
Wow, that's high numbers.
Pretty high, considering the fact that, well, you know, it has been tamped down somewhat by the phony press, but less so than others. At least it's reported. Wow, it's not like hiding the hard drive, right?
Right.
So it's a lot different than that. So what else?
That's right. We have people tuning in. Let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. And of course, you can visit RudyGiulianiCS.com. That's RudyGiulianiCS.com. And Mayor, what does the CS stand for? Common sense. And as I said, there are great podcasts there that can take you way back to the beginning of this whole Biden thing. You've got everything there. And last week we published several of the tapes that are very incriminating. I mean, they just about make a criminal case 100%. So I'd go back there and take a look at RudyGiulianiCS.com. I'd also, while we're at it, I would go to PatriotMobile.com/Rudy, and I would discuss with them getting coverage for your phone and all of your internet, because Patriot Mobile is a company that's on
our side. It's a Christian conservative company, and it puts a lot of its resources into helping with the right to self-defense, the right to life. Given the how socially left wing all of the social media is, to have something like this there is worth it, and we should support it the way the lefties support their organizations. Same thing with My Pillows. It's another place to go, and if you want the slippers or you want any of the many things Mike offers, go to mypillows.com/Rudy, and you get the lowest deal possible. Both of the companies are very, very, very sensitive to the fact that that this is a recession going on, or very close to it, and therefore they got to be careful in charging, and they charge really prices that work out, and they work things out with you. So take some of those resources and put them into the right place, the way those liberals do. There was a dog right near where we're going to be in a day or so, and Boca Raton on Yamato Road, which is a big road that goes right through Boca from, if I recall correctly, from east to west, or west to east, depending on where you start. This dog was cemented in the sidewalk, they say for days, and left to die. There were maggots crawling all over him, and he has severe tooth decay, 22 different medical conditions, paralysis, heart murmur, corneal ulcers, enlarged prostate, worms, severe periodontal disease, ear infections, and a urinary tract infection, according to the Tri-County Humane Animal Rescue. And the expenses already are over $2,500. So if you could make a donation to Tri-County Humane Animal Rescue in Boca Raton, Florida, it'd be a nice thing to do. Cute little dog. You want to see a picture of him? His name is Trooper. Now, did they name him Trooper, or do they know his name is Trooper? Because if he had some identification on him, we could find his owner and figure out who cemented this dog who would cement a dog to a street? Obviously a sick son of a you-know-what. Oh, he's been named that by the rescuers. He was found cemented to a Florida sidewalk, but survived despite being left for days. Look at this cute little face. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Maybe we'll go down and visit him. We'll go visit Trooper.
Yeah, that would be.
See how he's doing.
Where is he?
He's in Boca.
I think we might have to.
I never heard of this before. They put the dog on a sidewalk. They put the dog in a sidewalk. I mean, I'd love to find these guys. I know what their punishment should be, but I can't say it on the air.
Awful, 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 Mayor. So we're getting a lot of questions, a lot of good questions here. Mayor, what's your favorite part about Florida?
Favorite part about Florida was playing golf. That's my favorite part. No, but I like the wonderful weather too. I like the sun, the weather. Now I like the freedom. I like the fact that it's governed under American principles as opposed to more of a socialist communist state like New York or California or New Jersey. I think DeSantis is a really good governor, but I think they've had a succession of really good governors. I think Scott was a really good governor. I think Bush was a really good governor. I think Ron has inherited a good situation and done the most with it, much like Bloomberg did with me, and did the most with it. It's interesting about the contest between him and the president, and the president's remark the other day, the anger at his being disloyal because the president had supported him. And I've been asked about that today on the Sid and Friends show on WABC, where my son is a co-host twice a week. And they were sort of, they wanted me to tell Trump not to do that. And I don't think he should do it, but I understand why he feels it. They don't quite understand it. And maybe because I'm an old Italian, I don't know. But he did. I mean, here's the absolute truth. He's not exaggerating. He made him. This guy was going to
100%.
I'm going to tell you, I was there, and I went and campaigned for him two times. He was losing, and he's become a much better campaigner. He was not running a particularly good campaign. He was behind in every poll. He only won by a percentage. He just made it. And Trump, in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, went down there himself and he sent me twice. He sent other people. He sent us very specifically to get Ron through. And given how close it was, you'd have to say that was crucial. And it was a different time in the whole situation with Trump and Florida. And I don't know about Florida, but it was a time in which his endorsement was a magic. Whereas people are doubting it's quite the same. But I don't know. He's pulled a lot of people through, and a couple have lost. At that point, nobody had lost. So on a personal level, I would have exactly the same feelings he has. I'd feel that if I pull somebody through and I made their career in that sense, and maybe they could wait and not be one of the people that go after me after I've been so good to them. And I think in politics, we generally all feel that way. I mean, we all get upset if one of the people that we mentored or one of the people we brought along comes after our job. In this case, you would say it's like his job because he had it and he believes it was taken away from him unfairly. And even if it wasn't taken away unfairly, it was awful close. In a way, it's a thing about Trump that you either like or you don't. He's too darn honest, right? What he is expressing about DeSantis is a normal human feeling. I bet you'd feel that way if somebody tried to come and take your job away who you had gotten the job for. That's what we started kidding around, and he said, Sid said, well, what if Andrew becomes my partner and he tries to take my job away 5 years from now? I said, Sid, you should be very angry. You should really hate him if he does that. And by the way, I'd be very angry at him too, because I didn't bring him up that way. I didn't bring him up to be a disloyal guy.
So, Mayor, maybe that's something to keep in. Would you say that's something to keep in mind? Because I hear it a lot, not a lot, but I hear it from some people, right? Whoa, I wish Trump didn't go after DeSantis. I wish this and that.
I wish he didn't. I wish he didn't go after him because, but I'm being a politician now when I say that. I mean, I'm being a politician in the sense that I'm saying there are things you can leave out. What are the things you don't say? Somebody walks in and they look. Last time you saw them, they were skinnier. Now they're first thing you don't say, you look fat.
Yeah, you look great. If anything, maybe don't say anything.
Trump is different. Trump might you gain weight. It's not the worst thing about somebody that they're honest. I mean, and not maybe as tactful.
Yeah, and let's not pretend these are babies. I mean, Ron DeSantis is the sitting governor of the state of Florida, right? So when people say, "Oh, why is he going after DeSantis?" Like, you made some really good points, Mayor, and so hopefully people will at least take that into account when
the only reason I didn't like it, but they would have found something else. I thought it was an extraordinarily good speech. I know people said it was low energy, but that's kind of ridiculous because then they say he's too off. It was a very substantive speech. I mean, it was a heck of a lot more substantive than most of the politicians give today. I'm tired of listening to the congressman. It's all bull and
empty. They don't actually say anything.
He actually laid out what he's going to do based on what he did, and he displayed a knowledge of domestic and foreign policy that I don't know if anybody has to have. And maybe it's a comparison with the yo-yo we got in the White House, but it seemed awfully substantive to me.
And you mentioned this on the radio this morning.
I like him that way. Rather than just being a showman. And we could use a little of that too when he does the fooling around and he gets the people all excited. But this is not the time for it. This is the time to lay the groundwork for the ground that he's the most knowledgeable guy. And after all, his best argument is, I did it. You guys want to do it, I did it. And there's a difference between want to do it and did it. Because here's the truth. No matter who you are, and I think we got a couple of great presidents there and these people who are running. I do. But I'm not going to tell you which ones because I don't know. I know how difficult it is. And I know a lot of people who think they can do it can't. And they don't find out sometimes until they're there, mayor, governor, president. In his case, we know he can do it. in their case, we see good things, but we don't have assurance. And I don't know that we have the room right now for that. I don't know if we can take a risk. On the other hand, it's good for the party that we got such a great bench. And I hope they don't rip each other. I mean, I see Pompeo and is it the governor?
Nikki Haley.
And Nikki going at it. I mean, over this, whether she asked to be vice president or not. And she basically accused him of being a liar. Now, she's really accusing General Kelly of being a liar because Pompeo is quoting what Kelly said to him. So I'm interested in what Kelly said about it. Kelly told him that, and maybe he was being critical. I don't know of her begging or whatever. I think he did not put it in the most flattering terms, but that she came in and she was sort of, and it sounds credible to me because General Kelly was always annoyed by people going around him. That's right. She was going to Jason and Ivanka to try to get them to support her and put her on the ticket and dump Pence. And here's why it would make sense to me, because Kelly was the most sensitive guy to anybody going around him. So that would have probably really ticked him off at her. Not so even so much from wanting to be vice president, for not coming to him. Because his theory was a very military, I'm the chief of staff. You got to go through me. He's got the wrong guy with Trump. You got to go through me. You got to go through me. I'm in charge. What do you mean you talk to him without telling me? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that would have. So I'm trying to evaluate between the two people that I generally think tell the truth, Pompeo and Nikki. I think there's a little more on Pompeo's side here than on Nikki's. I think she was looking, kind of feeling around for the vice presidency. And something, so what?
Yeah. Mayor, do you think
she didn't know anything to Pence? And maybe she would have been a better candidate. I don't know. I mean, maybe I thought, if I recall correctly, see how good my memory is. Andy Stein wrote an op-ed piece in the Post, I believe, or the Wall Street Journal. I don't remember, recommending that he change that he's not going to win with Pence, and that Nikki Haley would bring new excitement to the ticket, the woman part, and she was better candidate, better campaigner than Pence. And he made a lot of arguments for it right out in the open. Had to be like about a year before the election, maybe even less. Maybe Doug Schoen was part of that too. The two of them wrote it together. So this wasn't a big secret. And I'm telling you, as I look back on it, Pence added nothing to. I don't think Pence took away or gave, which is good. When you don't take away, that's something. But maybe she would have been a more exciting, just a mere fact that, first, a woman with a woman on the ticket, or it would surely be a woman vice president. But look, whether you believe it was stolen or not, you do know it's close. So might have been the extra votes you needed in places like Georgia and Arizona, maybe Wisconsin. Those were dreadfully close, right? Who knows?
Well, Mayor, that's
this is politics, not tiddlywinks.
Well, Mayor, that's all the time we have this evening. Closing thoughts for our audience before we see him again tomorrow night from a brand new state.
Well, tomorrow night we'll be in a state of freedom. And I'll tell you my reaction when I first get there. I usually have this sense of, and maybe we'll cover a couple of things that are going on in Florida so you can know about it. I think it's a state that's right near the top now as one of the states people want to go to, live in, like the way it's governed. And again, I give DeSantis a great deal of credit for it, but as you can tell, I got real reservations on him running against President Trump. Or that he's even the right guy to do it, given the relationship there. I don't like that kind of thing. But in any event, I do think he's a hell of a governor. And I do think he had a nice background for it, because there were people who built it that way. But boy, as we found out, you can take it in either direction. And in fact, if you don't take it up, you take it down. If you don't make it better, it deteriorates. And he's making it better. So maybe we'll have a few people on that know what's going on down there, and also we'll get ourselves over to Mar-a-Lago and have some inside stuff from that sort of like second White House, huh?
Oh, what do they call it? The Winter White House?
I think it still is. I mean, it's a Winter White House where the president doesn't leave classified information in a garage.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be back on Biden got a night off tonight, but he won't get away tomorrow night. We'll have another little special from I packed it up already. Yeah. From the hard drive. I packed it up for it.